The heart of is simple, is a simple loop: to learn, to apply, to share, and to grow. Today we have a very exciting session for you. But before then, if you haven't, before you can join you can look at our social media platform and watch our previous sessions. If not, you can follow the value loop on these social media handles. Today we have a wonderful presentation by our very own doctor, and the topic she would be taking on today is work stress in modern cities, managing a growing health challenge. The doctor we have today is a very interesting person to have speak to us in the person of Dr. Kutsi Angodada. She is a medical doctor in the public health sector. She is a leader in driving healthcare improvements in northern Nigeria. Without further ado, I will give her the floor to give you a proper introduction of who she is and what she has for us today. So, Dr. Ango Dada, I will give you the floor to present your wonderful session.
Hello, Abba. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, whatever time it is where you're connecting from. It's such a pleasure to speak with you and to discuss this very important topic. I think that Abba has done a wonderful introduction, so I wouldn't stress us with another introduction. He has done a good job with that. I would go right into it. I would also just encourage everyone to really be to participate in this session. This is a very critical topic. It affects every one of us. Everyone who does a job or works needs to know how to manage work stress, because again, beyond the conversation, certain levels of stress can affect your health, not just your mental health, also your physical health. So Abba, is it okay to share my screen so we can commence the presentation?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You have the floor.
All right. Kindly let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes, we can, and you can have the floor and begin. Thank you very much.
Very great. Happy to know that you can see my screen. All right. So today's conversation is about workplace stress, especially in modern cities, managing a growing global health challenge. And I'd just like us to commence with an introduction, because again, the workplace stress is not just a personal struggle. It's not something that perhaps Abba is going through or Mohammed is going through. It's something that's a collective struggle. Many people are going through it, and it's something that has also been recognized by the public health sector. In cities, big cities like Abuja, Lagos, London, New York, people struggle to balance their activities, and the pace of city life is typically very much. So you combine the economic pressure, there are bills to be paid in urban cities. We know that rents are even higher. There is also the evolving work culture. There's just constant need to perform, and that's why this conversation of today matters, because when workplace stress becomes very overwhelming, it has measurable health consequences. So when there is stress, and typically what we mean by stress is just having things to do that's now beyond what you can handle, just beyond what you would rather be able to handle. And it's not just a temporary feeling of overwhelming. It's not a temporal overwhelming feeling. It's something that has the capacity to increase the risks of hypertension or other cardiovascular diseases or other heart diseases. It also has the risks of increasing anxiety. And I mean, this is common with people. Sometimes customers call and then you're anxious, you're wondering, you see a strange number, you're wondering who is on the other end of the phone. You don't even want to pick because you don't want to speak with someone. Perhaps it's even your family member, but just because, you are anxious and you're uncertain who is on the other end of the phone, you'd rather not pick. Certain outcomes at the workplace can also lead to depression. Perhaps you're anticipating a promotion and it didn't come, or maybe you're not meeting certain deadlines, certain expectations, and then you can fall into depression. These are things that have been associated with the workplace. Sleep disturbance, I'm sure that a lot of us on this call can, relate to that. You have deadlines, or there's something really important going on, or you're planning an event, or there's this very big client you're trying to convince to come into the company, and it causes you difficulty with sleeping. You can't even sleep, you can't rest, and it becomes like a circle of I can't sleep, I am tired, but I can't sleep, and I'm even more tired because I'm thinking about the things I need to do, and this is perhaps a very common thing. Also, unfortunately, sometimes we think that the more work we do and the less rest we take, the more productive we are. But that's not the case. With work fatigue or work stress, it results into reduced productivity. So perhaps something you would use 30 minutes to finish, it's taking you longer. And on very on extreme situations, when the situations are really bad, it can also lead to absenteeism. You can't just work because if your body shuts down or if you're unable to function because of one health condition or another, then it means you can't work at all. Now, we need to look at what are the things that are really driving, this sort of fatigue, what it is that drives fatigue, right? And at the core of workplace stress, we have the issue that the demands are exceeding a person's capacity. And several factors are responsible for this. For example, long working hours. And I term this an always-on culture. An always-on culture is simply the fact that, unlike before in the past when work was structured to be an office, a physical space, and for you to work, it required you to go to the office, go to the shelf, pick certain files, and treat with them. Nowadays, you work with the files around. The files are on your phone or on your laptop. You have WhatsApp communities. You have ways that your bosses, your clients can reach out to you. Your social media is no longer as social as it should be because you're always on, you're always taking orders, you're always on the go. It's all about the money. And so it increases your working hours. So even though it's past 5 p.m., you're still taking order at 10 p.m. or you're still conversing with a customer at 11 p.m. So this is what I mean by always on. There's also the commute stress. I mean, people who are in big cities, Lagos, New York City, Accra, cities that have, a lot of traffic. Studies has shown that in cities like that, you lose over 2 hours just commuting to work. So you are stuck in traffic for over 2 hours, seated. There's you're inhaling all sort of the air is not particularly healthy and you're inhaling all sorts of things, and perhaps you're also under a lot of pressure to meet certain deadlines, so you're not particularly relaxed on your drive to work, and all of this has its own effect on your health. You also have the issue of insecurity. You also have the issue of insecurity, job insecurity, and people are worried about job insecurity. They are concerned that, okay, if I do not perform, perhaps I would lose my job. And so it makes people want to do more and keep doing more and keep doing more, that sort of thing. And so this is something that also, just worsens the situation. There's also the issue of economic pressure. So with economic pressure, bills are piling up in bigger cities. Of course, it's even costlier to live in bigger cities. Fuel, you have to maintain your car, you have to pay for rent, you have to buy food, and this just worsens the situation because that people feel like, oh, I can't pause, I can't afford to pause at any point. There's also the workplace culture, which, to be fair, can be different from one place to another. And then there's the digital overload, which I have sort of touched on a bit. So what are the warning signs that you're having fatigue? Let's first take a scenario, right? A young professional, perhaps in Abuja, he works, at a fast-paced consulting firm, maybe as a consultant, and at first, he feels a bit tired. He just says, "Oh, maybe I'm just stressed." Within weeks, he begins to snap at his colleagues, or she begins to snap at her colleagues, or she's missing small details in reports. She's supposed to do this, but she doesn't remember to do it, and she's relying heavily on caffeine. So every day it's coffee in the morning, coffee in the evening. Every day it's coffee in the morning, coffee in the evening, and this is like a scenario. She just tells herself, "Oh, it's a busy period," but in reality, it's the early phase of chronic stress, and chronic stress will typically start with signs like this. For example, constant fatigue. Even after you rest, sometimes you go to bed and you wake up and you're still very tired. You go to bed, you wake up and you're still very tired. Apologies, just a minute, please. I've just been informed that my video wasn't, showing. Please confirm that you can see me now.
Yes, we can see you now.
Oh, sorry, apologies
Good
for
to
that.
see you. Well, we can see you now.
All right, great. All right, so like I was saying, so there's constant fatigue. You go to bed, you rest, you wake up, but still you're very tired. There's the irritability or mood swings, very little things get to you. You're already angry. You're already very, early in the morning. I mean, you're already so angry because you're tired. You haven't rested. You also have difficulty, concentrating. So it means that you also take longer to complete your tasks. You have difficulty concentrating. So you are unable to get things done, and yet there are things to be done. There's headache, muscle tension. There's also loss of motivation. You just feel dissatisfied with the job. You're not motivated to do the work. And typically, people can have changes in sleep or appetite. And now I must say that changes in sleep or appetite can be either ways. So it can be that this changes in sleep or appetite causes you to sleep more or to sleep less. It can be either way. So either you're sleeping too much or you are unable to sleep. And in this time when you're unable to sleep, honestly, it's not as if you're doing any work. You're just on source. Some people just keep scrolling and scrolling. Some of the warning signs, these are the signs and symptoms that this can happen. So I think the next thing to think about now is, how do you handle it? Honestly, handling this is not it's not particularly an individual thing, right? Because it's a systemic problem. It's beyond you as the employee. It has your employer has a role, and the government also has a role. But let's start with what you can do as an individual. So first of all, there's the need to cope, right? And we talk about it very frequently. That boundary setting is very important. You need to define clear work hours, even if it's imperfect, and you need to enforce those clear work hours. Also, you need to have micro recovery periods. So take breaks in between work. You shouldn't be seated at your desk for 8 hours, 10 hours. It's not a point to brag about. It's not something to say, "Oh, I'm so hardworking." No. You need to stand, break, at least take 5 minutes to walk around, or at least 5 to 10 minutes to walk around. So exercise, stretch, take deep breathing exercises, just relax. There needs to be a time where you're not even facing your screen. I mean, nowadays, the screen time for a lot of people is so much. Physical exercise is very important. In fact, if you are able to exercise 20 to 30 minutes at least a day, it helps you to deal with stress. And of course, it helps you to be healthier overall, physically and mentally. Physical exercise can be brisk walking every day. Maybe you take walks. If your office is perhaps in a tall building, you can substitute taking the lift for using the staircase, and that can be your own form of exercise. However, just learn and try to incorporate exercise. And to be honest, there's no harm with exercise. Exercise does you good on multiple levels. It helps you Even if you're already hypertensive, of course, exercise helps with controlling the hypertension, but again, it helps to protect your heart. Sleep hygiene, protected sleep is non-negotiable. And when we say sleep hygiene, this is what we mean. There are multiple ways for you to ensure that you are sleeping well. Observing rules like ensuring that you have no screen time, ensuring that the light is off or at least dimmed before you go to bed, ensuring also that you do not have work things on your bed. Perhaps you have a contract you want to read, just ensuring that that environment is safe for you to sleep. Also, when we talk about sleep hygiene, we're talking about ensuring that you sleep at particular hours. So it's not okay for you to sleep 8 hours a day. It's also important that you regularize the time you sleep. So a good example would be if you're sleeping from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., ensure that the routine is that you sleep from 10 a.m. to 6 and from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., such that it's not a situation where, okay, on Monday you sleep from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. On Tuesday, you still try to sleep for 8 hours, but this time around, you're sleeping from 3 a.m. to perhaps 11 a.m. You know, the sleep pattern is just irregular. That's not good sleeping hygiene. A very important way. I liked how Abba introduced this platform, and it tells me that this platform is a social support for many people. So platforms like this, where you're able to talk about stress, where you're able to converse with people who work in your space, leveraging on your family, going out, doing things that you love at times when you're not working. This is a social support that we're talking about. Like I said, workplace stress is not handled by one person, it's handled in layers. And the second layer would be what your employers must do. Now, I'm taking time to speak about this because perhaps on this call, we have both employees and we have employers. Yes, it's by all means ensure that there is a flexible arrangement. So remote, you shouldn't come into the office, and that's okay. Also, a reasonable workload distribution. Sometimes other people are doing so much and other people are doing so little. I mean, if you have so much to do on your schedule, it may take you longer to get it done, as opposed to if you the possibility of them finishing in good time, you know, is possible. So let's ensure that there's workload distribution, have insurances, and this insurances should also cover mental health support. Leadership training on emotional intelligence, absolutely. How do you handle the stress? How do you recognize the stress? How do you ensure that this stress is not spilling over to your other work colleagues or to your employees? So if like an employer of labor is stressed and then he's snapping at everybody and he's not even communicating his expectations properly. Hello, someone said something? Hello? Okay,
No one said anything. You can go on.
Okay, I thought someone was speaking. All right, so yes, I was speaking about emotional intelligence. Even as an employer, if you're stressed, chances are your employees too would be stressed because perhaps you wouldn't communicate well, perhaps you wouldn't be able to, you know, patiently explain tasks to them. It can just spiral into losses and it can spiral into more. And it brings me to the next point: clear communication and role expectations. Let people know what, you know, they are meant to do, ensure that they understand what their roles are, and understanding their roles will start even from the point of hiring. Ensure that you're not putting square pegs in round holes. You're ensuring that the person who is supposed to be on a particular task has the expertise to do that task. Because now if you ask a fish to fly, he can't, simply because he wasn't built to do that. Same thing if you ask a bird to swim, it's not necessary that he's able to, you know, do that as much as the fish can. So ensuring that even your employees have roles that, you know, they are best suited to do, it helps with work stress. Because at the end of the day, when you give the wrong employee the wrong task, they are stressed because they cannot do it. You are stressed because they did not do it. It's stress on both ways. So these are a few things that employers of labor can do. As we come to, you know, a close of this, I think it's very important that I speak about the policy and public health response as a public health expert myself. I think that every nation should have workplace mental health policies, also enforcement of labor laws on working hours, beyond working hours, on public holidays, on holidays. No one should really be forced to work beyond what the labor laws accommodate. Urban planning too is very important. I mean, if a city is well planned, people shouldn't spend 2 hours, 4 hours really early if you want to get to work early. And you start out so early, you spend maybe 2 hours on the road. It means that by the time you get to work, you're perhaps tired. You're not even at your best, you know. So that's something that you can help. Integration of mental health into primary health care. This is just to improve the access so that smaller hospitals can be able to deal with issues of mental health. And that's quite a strong recommendation. We're going to very much go into conversations. So please begin to prepare your questions and begin to share your experiences. But I just want us to think about what the future of work is, you know, with the trend that we are seeing. What work would look like in the future first is that work is definitely going to be AI-driven productivity. So AI is here to stay. If you're an employer of labor or an employee, familiarize yourself with it. Think about how it can make your work easier and make you better at what you already do. Hybrid work models, I already spoke about it. The possibility of working for some days in the physical office space and working, you know, offline outside the physical workspace. Also, there seems to be an increasingly blur between work and life. And this is because, like I said, we carry our work around. You have it in your laptop, on your phones, WhatsApp groups. I'm sure if I say that, how many of us have answered messages late in the night, 10 a.m. I'm sure there are people who they've seen messages on their work WhatsApp and they had to reply. Now, just also considering those who work different shifts. There are people who work night shifts, and I mean, medical doctors do that. I don't want to talk about how bad the shifts are, but also things that can be done is to ensure that this the standard shifts for workers like that who work in shifts pretty much. Now, as we conclude, I just want to highlight something that the work stress is the experience of work stress is unequal in its dimension, right? Everybody doesn't experience work stress the same way. There are certain people that are more prone to it. And I just wanted to highlight them. First, entry-level staff. Of course, there's the whole issue of job insecurity. So they function on that. They are rolling on that, on the fear that, oh, there is a possibility that I may lose my job if I do not do well. So they are on constant pressure to perform, to, you know, show their capacity, as opposed to, you know, staffs that are perhaps have stayed longer in the organization. Of course, women too also experience this inequality, this stress in a higher dimension. Some they have to juggle between work a lot more. So this one is when we're switched off from work. Some people have not even taken their work leave, even though it exists. Some people have never had the mind to say, okay, I'm going to take a few minutes. Or some of you have not even taken your leave, annual leave. What is annual leave? We keep working, you know. But ask yourself the question, when was the last time you switched off from work? And if you had to answer the question, what is more important, your health or deadlines? At this point, I'll pause and perhaps and then we take it up from there. Abba, over to you.
That was a very beautiful presentation, and I am pretty certain we have picked up a lot of things around stress. Personally, I would admit that I do not know how to turn off from work. My brain is constantly thinking, and people keep telling me, you need to find time to relax. I'm sure a lot of people on this call also have that same issue, and I'm sure some questions will be rolling in for us to try and tackle. You have mentioned a couple of things. You have mentioned even into dimensions of how people would feel when they are new staffs or when they're newly hired, the kind of stresses they will go through, maybe when it comes to gender inequality, when it comes to I'm in a new environment. These are very important points to tackle. Someone has asked a question already in the chat box. This question is coming from Mohammed Abubakar. How best can one manage stress in a high pressure sales and customer facing role? So it's a question of maybe somebody that works in a place that they are constantly meeting or constantly tackling customers. So how would you advise them to handle that stress?
All right. Do you want me to take per question? So I should answer this and we take the next one, or you want me to take everything at once?
You can answer them one by one so we can allow people come in with their questions.
Oh, great. That's a great question. And I am glad you asked that. For everyone who works in any sector that requires you to speak with clients or requires you to have some sort of personal conversation with humans, it's important, first of all, to define what success is for you. I find that for a lot of people, the major pressure that they get from work is perhaps their own definition of what success. And I say that you must define what success is for you so that other people define what success is for you in the space.
I think your internet is a little bit shaky, so can you please take that again?
Sales and customer facing role requires a lot of emotional intelligence, and that can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, we lost you a bit, but I think it's much better now.
Oh, great. Happy to know that you can hear me clearly. So I was making reference to the fact that for people who work with customers, the first step is to define what success is so that other people do not define what success is. I know we say a lot of times that the customer is always right, but also defining what success is for you. So, for example, if you're in a marketing firm, what does success the client gets the way possible to the client, or is success tied to a particular number? Is success tied to a particular deadline? That's the first thing. Secondly, please, it's important for every worker to set good and reasonable goals. Sometimes people wake up in the morning, go to work, and set unreasonable goals. Now, the problem with setting unreasonable goals is that you end up feeling sad when you do not meet these goals. But if you set reasonable goals, it helps you. So you do not go to work saying that you're going to perhaps service, you're working for only 5 hours and you say, oh, you want to speak to over 200 clients. That's an unreasonable goal, right? If you set reasonable goals, you'll get reasonable results. But importantly, when you have to deal with customers, especially meeting customer needs, it's so important to apply emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence would help you to know when and how to respond to people. But generally, every other thing that I have mentioned earlier in this presentation is very important. People who exercise are able to handle stress more, even mental stress. They respond differently from people who do not exercise. And this is because in the process of exercise, there's a lot that your body releases that helps you to cope with stress. People who have slept. So I have said one time that the easiest way to run mad is not to sleep for days. If you know that the kinds of customers or the kinds of clients that you meet are demanding clients, help you to rest very well, sleep very well, so that when you get to work, you are facing them with a very fresh mind. Assuming you did not rest and you're taking over, the stress of yesterday into today, it means that you're likely to respond to them in the wrong way. So again, I will reiterate that it's important to exercise. It's also sleep, but reasonable goals, and always know what success is for you. Mohammed, perhaps you can tell me if this helps a little bit. But it is so important to always apply emotional intelligence in the ER, in the emergency unit. So many emergencies, you have to triage, you have to decide who should you attend to first. Patients and patient relatives putting you under pressure. But at the end of the day, you need to have emotional intelligence, communicate clearly, communicate what is possible. I think sometimes people do not communicate. You say, for example, in my work setting, I can say to this patient, all right, I will attend to you shortly. I have to do this, I have to do that. Or perhaps I can explain that this situation requires me to do this, but if you give me adequate time, you also would, get what you want. Pretty much also communicate. I think it's good point to communicate. I hope that has been answered. So yeah, over to you, Abba.
That is a very brilliant answer. I have picked up one or two, and I would also like to say that I'm a big advocate of exercise. Really helps. I think it releases a lot of tension. It can be from a walk, can be skipping in your room. It can be actually even dance exercise. You can put on some music and just make sure that you sweat. I have a friend that always reminds me every day, have you sweated today? Or have you taken a walk? So things like that, they actually help. So straight from the doctor's mouth, please try and exercise. It really helps. Oluwatosin has also a question and a comment at the same time, or rather, it's a full question. So she says, no matter how much she's tired, if she doesn't get to bed before 8 p.m., I lose sleep until midnight or even later. So if she sleeps early and wakes up around 2 a.m., she stays awake until morning. So what steps can she take to improve her sleep hygiene?
All right, that's a good question. So improving sleep hygiene would take developing a habit. So I will say a couple of things, but these things you need to do them consistently until it becomes like habitual. And it would definitely happen slowly, but the change would eventually occur. Now, I mentioned initially that it's important to always say, okay, how many hours of sleep? Of course, we advise at least 8 hours. If I'm able to take 8 hours of sleep, from what time to what time, right? Now, if you establish the time, the ambience, how does your room look like? The factors that can stop you from sleeping are numerous. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a bit very honest here, but the factors are numerous. So first of all, are you comfortable in where you're sleeping? How does your bed feel? Are you on an orthopedic bed? Do you like the feel of your bed? Do you like the smell of your room? Do you have a partner, a roommate who snores? What keeps you up at wake? What makes you wake up early? Is it because you have to deal with children? Or I mean, I don't expect a breastfeeding mother, for example, to have the same sleep experience as every other person. Then some things that you can now do. Now, these are factors perhaps that are not totally in your control. Some things that you can now do as a person is ensure, like I said, that hours before you even fall asleep, there is no gadget around you. The lights are turned off. If soft music helps you sleep better, perhaps if you want the place to be really quiet, then that's great. Ensure you don't caffeine in depth that, drinks, just few hours before bedtime. Ensure to empty your bladder few hours before bed so that you're not just going to bed and you wake up because you want to use the restroom. And after you wake up, you can ensure that you don't take too much water few hours before going to bed so that you don't have to wake up because you are pressed. Another thing to consider, these are all things to do to ensure that you have better sleep. Don't eat too late. So if you want to start, say 8 p.m., it doesn't make sense to now eat at 8:45, 15 minutes. You're going to bed really just, and then you go to bed, feeling better. All of these are important. If there are personal reasons why you do not sleep, if there are life changes, some people do not sleep well if they have like a big event, if they have something coming. students can relate. Sometimes when you just have exams, it's nothing. Even when the lights are turned off, the bed is fine, nobody is disturbing you, you can't sleep because there's something ahead of you. So also identify what the trigger is. But if you're able to identify, what wakes you up or what makes you not to sleep, and then tackle it, that can help really. But if there's any other thing that I've mentioned that you're not already doing, perhaps you should try to do them. So eat on time, eat at least 2 hours before bedtime, ensure the room is and the ambience is, good, ensure you do not have gadgets, or do work things just right before you go to bed. These are things that can help. I hope I have answered you, Oluwatosin. Over to you, Abba.
I am guilty of a lot of things that you just mentioned. I eat like 5 minutes before I go to bed. It's very bad. I am very guilty of a lot of the things you mentioned, so I would not expose myself to all of them that you said. I would just say I will take your advice. You have another question that says, with young professionals sometimes having to juggle multiple jobs or commitments due to economic pressure and fueling workplace culture, what's the ideal way to tackle the never-ending stress? So this question speaks to a lot of us here. It's not just young professionals. I think almost everybody is trying to keep up with the job, trying to keep up with the economy. So there's endless stress. My personal advice is to try and find you time, but I'll let you hear from the doctor herself.
I think that, Aisha, you have asked a very good question. A lot of people are working multiple jobs, and unfortunately, it's the economy that's, determining that sort of lifestyle for everyone. But even when you work multiple jobs, all of the issues that, all of the things that we spoke about prior, they are things that you must put in place. As you work multiple jobs, you need to ensure that you're eating well. Sometimes people work all through the day and they don't even remember to have lunchtime. I was in East Africa for a while, and if there's anything I learned in East Africa is that they take lunchtime seriously. When you go to offices at lunchtime, no one is there because people have actually gone for lunch. Unfortunately, in other parts that I have been, lunchtime is, well, it's documented on your TOR that you have 1 hour of lunchtime, but nobody really takes it seriously. In fact, meetings are not put at lunchtime. Now, that would be something that employers might need to look out for. But yes, try to eat well, try to exercise, try to sleep. With multiple jobs, try to understand what the demands are and also define what successes on these multiple jobs are. There is a way that multiple jobs can become very disadvantageous, because remember I mentioned about there's a paradox. Sometimes we think that the more we work, then the more we get. But again, the body was designed to rest. Even God rested after creating the earth. But yes, there needs to be rest time for the body to recuperate, to reset. And even with multiple jobs, you have to put strategies in place to ensure that you are having time to rest. So, for example, as a medical doctor, if I have to work 2 places, right? I work in a government facility and in a private facility. What can I do? First of all, my job in the government facility, let's say it starts from 8 a.m. to maybe 3 p.m. The next thing to do isn't to ensure that my next job starts at 4 p.m. That would mean that I only have 1 hour to commute. And with the way medical field is, perhaps I had some emergencies, perhaps I didn't really have any real-time break. The right thing to do at the private facility is to ensure that I have some space between the time of leaving the public facility to the private facility. Or I have alternate days when I do not necessarily have to go to the private facility, right? Or I have fewer hours in the private facility. Whilst I'm doing that and ensuring that this structure works, I am still exercising, I'm still eating well, I'm still sleeping well, because a healthy doctor is the only one that can treat, an unhealthy patient. If your doctor is unhealthy, he will not even be on seat, he will not even be available. So as much as you want to work, as much as you want to meet these economic demands, you must also remember that you need to be well to do that. I always refer to COVID, how COVID showed us that health is very important, because it shut down every sector. It didn't matter. It didn't matter whatever you said you were doing. You just had to sit at home, because health is very important. It's a cornerstone. So don't joke around with your health. whether you have multiple jobs, whatever economic pressure, you have to be alive, you have to be well to meet them. Don't forget that on all of these economic pressure, you definitely don't want to add health bills on it. Trust me, hospital bills are expensive. So it's better to prevent it than even get into it. And ultimately, I think perhaps the bigger advice will be that you eventually find reasons to work in places that are able to give you the best remuneration, such that even when you have multiple jobs, they'll be out of passion and they will not be driven by the hunger in your belly. Like, I believe that by God's grace, people should get to the point where what drives them to do the things they do is beyond the hunger in their belly. And that's a good place to be. I hope I answered you fairly well, Aisha. Thank you.
I also believe you've answered her very well. Speaking of hunger in your belly, when you're very stressed, sometimes just eat. All you need is very nice jollof rice or pounded yam. It will help you release some stress. I'm pretty sure. We also have another question from Ibrahim Lowell. He probably joined in late, but Ibrahim is asking, what is the link between stress and cardiovascular issues, particularly since there's a surge in young professionals suffering from one cardiovascular issue to the other?
Okay, so like you see, I mentioned earlier, because what happens with stress, so let me just try to depict a cycle of stress. So a young person goes to work. At work, they have demands, they have screen time. I didn't even mention how screen time is damaging eyes and it's not good for, you're having headaches. Screen time causes headache because of the lights, just so many things around that. And then goes back home and perhaps they work remotely in another country. So they work during the night and then they just get maybe 3 hours of sleep and they eat a quick snack because, again, they don't even have the time to cook. So they eat an unhealthy quick snack. And during this work, they are sitting down. They are not moving. So it's on the computer. We're just looking at our screen all of this time. So first thing, long sitting hours, looking at the screen, poor diet. Have you seen the few things that have happened? A poor diet is closely linked with cardiovascular disease. So if you're eating snacks because you do not have time to even cook a proper meal, which is also, the truth that a stressful work life and poor work-life balance can affect you in such a way that you're even unable to cook your meals. So you're eating fast food, increasing the risks of obesity, weight gain, very much associated with your diet and the fact that you are sitting around. Sedentary lifestyle is all that you need because you're not exercising. And then the fact that you're not sleeping well, your body is not having the time to repair because there's a wear that happens, and each time you rest, the body is able to release a lot of things that helps you to repair all of these cells, all of these worn out cells. But there's no even sleep time for you. There's only screen time for you. And so by the time that you accumulate all of these factors, the lack of exercise, the sedentary lifestyle, the poor sleep, and the poor food that you're eating, you arrive at a place where you are sitting on a cardiovascular risk, and that's pretty much the link. Without being too medical, that's the best way to explain it. And so that's why we say you must exercise, you must eat well, you must ensure you sleep well, regardless of what it is. And yes, that's why also the surge, in those days, technology has also made our lives easier, but it has also reduced the possibility of exercising day to day. So if you're even on the highbrow, you probably drive to work, you're just sitting while driving, you get to the office, you just get to the lift, you go to your office, you sit down, when you're coming down, you get on the lift. So you're really not exercising. And the difference is, at least in those days, perhaps you do take a walk, you walk to your office, that's some sort of exercise. Or maybe you also farm. So that's some sort of exercise. But nowadays it's sedentary kind of work, and it's doing a lot of harm to us. I hope I answered that, Mr. Lawal Ibrahim.
Mr. Lowell Ibrahim, they say you should go back to the farm. If you can, maybe grow some carrots in your garden, try and not use the lift at your office, and take like 5-kilometer walks every morning. The doctor has answered your question very rightfully. I think there's a question that's very important, I think, here that relates to almost everybody. So I know that a lot of people have probably normalized stress. And somebody's asking, what would you say to someone who has normalized stress so much that they no longer realize that it's harming them? So they've made stress part of their daily routine. I am also somehow guilty of that, but let's not talk about that yet.
So I like that question, because what happens when we make stress part of our normal routine is we also want to normalize it for someone. And I'm worried about anyone who normalizes stress, because beyond normalizing stress for themselves, they will try to normalize it. So you hear statements like, I mean, I'm always busy. And I'm always busy is said from a place of pride. Like, I'm always busy with work. I'm such a workaholic, right? And then you now demand that level of busyness from other people. You demand that, perhaps the staff at your office also work as much as you work, because I mean, I was up at 2 a.m. replying your emails. What stops you from replying your email? That's a very dangerous way to think of it. But it would need a lot of thinking through. There was a cute video I watched, perhaps not too much of a cute video, but it was a video that my husband shared with me. And it was a video of two young people who had a beautiful home, and they had this beautiful home, and they decided they wanted a home by the lake. So they got the home by the lake. But when they got the house by the lakeside, it meant more expenses. So they decided to work more, work multiple jobs. They are always outside. So now there's nobody to take care of the home, and they got a nanny, and the nanny started to stay at home like a caretaker, and she was always staying at home. She was always going to take care of the home, and she would sit by the lake, the very house they got by the lake to enjoy themselves. They are going to work, they're not enjoying it, but the nanny would sit, enjoy every amenity, and then the circle continues until they have no energy for work, and they are too sick to enjoy the money they have accumulated. Now think about it that way. You have to ask yourself, what's more important to you, your health or work? And it's typically a disaster where the money you are seeking, you get the money, but then you have to use this same money to treat the health condition that you got in getting the money. I'll go again. So it's sad if the money that you work so hard to earn is the same money you spend to treat the health challenges that you get while you were trying to get the money. So, I mean, it's a hard choice to make. Setting boundaries and having work-life balance is not something that comes easy. Something has to give. You have to prioritize. Is having 50 billion what me, getting a cardiovascular disease or having a heart attack? Or would I rather have 25 million, but spend some time at home, create time to sleep, have time to exercise? So for that person, I think they need to introspect and decide what is more important. And by all means, they pick what is best for them. And when they decide what is best for them, when it's a good thing when they realize that this stress, I'm normalizing it. But when they decide, what would I really want, where do I see myself? What would I want for myself when I'm, in the next 10 years or in the next 20 years? Do I want to be a slave to work, or work should, be a means for me? We need to think about work as a means to an end, not the end itself. It's just a means for, to get money, to get economic incentives and all of that. And I think it's a mindset shift. And once you get that mindset shift, then you begin to trace how to find the balance. I think I would leave it at that.
Wonderful answer. Somebody has their hand off. So Usman wants to ask this question verbally. So I will let him and give him the floor to actually ask you the question. So Usman, if you can.
Okay, sure.
Good morning or good afternoon, Dr. Dada. Good afternoon, Abba. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I actually have two questions. And well done, Dr. Dada. Wonderful presentation. Okay, my first question is around the tiny line between stress and exercise. Okay, so a very good example. A situation whereby you rush to join the staff bus in the morning, but you take like a 20 minutes walk to join the bus. And also when you come back from work, you take another 20 minutes walk back home. I don't know if that counts as an exercise or a stressor, because a situation whereby you are trying to meet up with the boss and you are very late and you are rushing. You are saying you are exercising, but in the real sense of it, you are stressed. By the time you enter the staff bus, you are panting for air and so much more. So that's my first question. Then my second question is around an indirect stress, where uh, you actually get stressed because somebody very close to you is stressed. A very good example, maybe your wife is getting stressed up at work, indirectly she comes home and it becomes an issue, you get stressed. How do you manage an indirect stress? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Great questions, absolutely great questions. I love the questions. So the first one, I'll take the first one and then the second one. The second one is even more interesting. The first one is about the work you take 20 minutes before you get to work and on your way back. Ideally, that's very good exercise. Now, the only challenge with it is the mental component of it. I think that when you take that walk to the bus and you take the walk from, the bus to the house, you take it disgruntledly, not with the, joy. Perhaps what I would advise is to approach it with joy, realizing that this exercise is good for me. And the proof that the exercise is good for you, that panting that occurs when you sit on the bus. You need to continue that exercise until when you sit on the bus, you are just like, you did nothing, because it tells us the health of your heart, right? And that's just me being honest. A lot of times, if you cannot walk a particular distance without panting in that way, because again, people who have trained their body, they're able to do that exercise without panting because their body is able to take it on. And what I did not mention about how exercise is important is it makes you to be more productive. It helps you to handle other people's stress even more. It activates your muscles, and it's almost like your entire body is ready to take on the day. So I'm happy to hear that you're able to do that, just before you go to work. Just before you go to work. So I'd say that counts as exercise, but you need to revise the mental component and look at it in the positive light. Also, you need to approach it with more positivity. Don't approach it as a tax that, oh, this is an inconvenience. Or, I mean, it's great to maybe have a car or have other ways to handle it without having to work. But from going forward, I would advise that you look at it positively. It will help you handle it better. Secondly, about indirect stress. That's very common. I'm sure that everyone on this call has experienced indirect stress one way or the other. Once another person is stressed, it spirals it, and you are also stressed because they are stressed. But I think the primary thing is to perhaps teach your partner how to also handle their stress. Just a quick shout out. Before I got on this call, I had a lot to do, and I could have been stressed before I got on this call, but my partner was there trying to ensure that, oh, are you ready? Let me set up the studio for you. Let me get the lights for you. Sometimes helping people or helping them alleviate their stress is a good way to start. So you look out for ways, what stresses them. Conversations around perhaps what at work stresses you. If she tells you situations, or if your partner tells you about situations that are stressing you, managing the root cause is the easiest way, and also ensuring that your partner is able to handle it in the best way. So don't exercise alone. Perhaps I've been saying the wrong thing. Exercise with your partner and everyone that means a lot to you, so that the stress doesn't spiral and get to you. But also always handling this sort of things with some sort of emotional intelligence helps. Understand them, understand their situation, and help them overcome the situation, or help them see how they can best handle the situation. It's also really important to let them know, communicate. I mentioned in one of the answers I was giving that communicating is very important. Communicate clearly, that each time you come back home and you're very tired and you begin to snap at me, it stresses me too, and that way you make some sort of progress. But yes, perhaps you should also exercise with your partner or anyone whose stress stresses you. I hope that's it. That answers it to some extent.
Wow, wow, and wow. You have answered a lot of the questions, even the questions that have come after you've answered them with the one you just gave. Some people have left some comments there for you. Somebody said exercise does reduce stress and prepares you to respond mentally and physically, which is a great response. We have someone that asked a question also that he commended the presentation you made. It says it's well articulated. This comment is coming from Hassan Abedi. He mentioned that he would like to know screen exposure before bedtime, such as watching TV using your phone, can negatively affect your sleep quality. It would be very helpful to highlight how long before sleeping screen should be avoided. So I think you kind of mentioned this, but if you can just highlight it again for them, I'll run through one or two other ones so that I can take them all together, and then we don't overload you with questions, because I know that you might have to go and save a life somewhere. The other question is there a technique I can use within the workplace in the middle of a stressful workday that can actually that actually works within minutes without me looking unproductive? So this person is trying to figure out if he's in the middle of a war zone and he can try and de-stress. So I'll let the doctor answer that one. I don't know how to de-stress in the middle of a war zone. The next one, the next one says, perhaps the most concerning part of some of us, for some of us, is not that stress exists, but many of us have learned to live with it. So I think this person's commenting to how you explain that people have normalized stress. They said that they appreciate your presentation, and there's a lot of self-reflection on the cards for them. And for us also, I think everybody on the call should have some self-reflection. So I'll leave that for now so that we can continue, because we'll finish in about 10 minutes. So.
Oh, great. Absolutely love the community. You're very engaging, and I love the question. Very cool. So just about how many minutes? So at least 30 minutes to an hour. You can keep your phone, the televisions. I mean, if you reflect, you'd realize that sometimes the very last things that you watch, because they're still in your subconscious, you maybe even dream about them because those were the last things that you interacted with. So yes, just 30 minutes to an hour before sleep time is very adequate. The second question was, Abba, please remind me the second question.
The second question was, is there a quick technique that I can use in my workplace?
Yes, so the quick technique is the breathe in, breathe out technique. Perhaps all of us can do it in this on this call, and it's just a way to take care of, anxiety. We also, it's not just for stress. We tell people who feel like they're about to have a panic attack or that they can do that. So you breathe in and you count 40. So taking the breath while you are still holding the breath, while you're still inhaling. As you inhale, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 40. You keep that breath for 40. So you inhale, take it all in. 1, 2, 3, 4, that way up to 40. And then you hold it, you count 40 while you're holding it. And then you exhale for at least, you count 1 to 60. So this exercise can be completed in like 2 minutes, because I'm assuming that whilst you're counting 40, that's like 40 seconds, and like that, another 40 seconds, and then 60 minutes. So that can be done. That's a quick way to handle stress. Do the breathing exercise, the breathing technique. Also, another quick thing that you can do is just take a moment. Just, take a moment, perhaps excuse yourself. I know a lot of people excuse themselves. You can say, I want to use the restroom, and you take a minute away from, the stress, and just think clearly, think through whatever is stressing you clearly. So if it's a client, you ask yourself, what can I do to take away the stress right now? What can I do to douse the stress? You must avoid panic. You must avoid panic. I had to learn this the hard way. Panicking doesn't help. Sometimes it just worsens situations. Panicking sometimes just makes things, go south. So don't panic. You can actually verbalize reaffirmations. You can tell yourself, I don't have to panic. I have this under control. If you're a person of faith, you can say a word of prayer, and that always helps. You can do the breathing exercise, and you can just take a moment out of this whole scenario so that you're able to think for a few minutes. And you can, all of these things that I've said can happen in 5 minutes. You do your breathing exercise in 2 minutes. You say a short prayer in 1 minute. You close your eyes, you think in a minute, you reaffirm yourself in 1 minute, and you have 5 minutes of empowering yourself. You tell yourself, oh, this situation, I have it. If it's a situation where you're feeling, you're feeling low or something, you remind yourself why you're here, why this needs to be done, what results. Remind yourself of your motivations. I mean, if your pretty wife at home is your motivation, why not? You say, oh, I'm doing this for Fatima and the children. They're so important to me, and that's it. I mean, I think those are a few things I can say that can really help you in a bit whilst not looking unproductive. And honestly, on the extreme, when you absolutely cannot work, some days you just actually have to switch off and be unproductive for a while so that when you return, you can be more productive. Because if, for example, you didn't sleep and you're really sleepy, you just cannot cheat nature, right? You are so stressed and you're already sleeping off. A document that should take you an hour to read, you're taking 4 hours to read. It's better for you that you just sleep for those 3 hours so that when you wake up, you can read the document in an hour. So that's what I can say about that. So about those who concerning parts about how stress exists and how it has been normalized, I agree that we should all self-reflect, myself included, even as I speak to this particular topic. I mentioned to Abba and the team that it's an excellent one. The choice is a beautiful topic, and it's a conversation that perhaps should not just happen here. More people should hear about it. So yes, absolutely. Abba, have I answered all the questions?
Yes, you have. You have probably two more as such, but you have answered almost every question perfectly. You have given us some serious motivation. Because of you, I'm going back to the gym very soon. I mean, I've been prolonging it, but definitely going back. I'll take 1 or 2 people that I know on the call with me. It's also good that you're motivating some people to get motivation from maybe their pretty wives or handsome husbands at home to get their motivations as their stress reliefs and stuff like that. Your point of also exercising with your partner is very important. I think if you have an exercise body to try and motivate you, to try and push you to do certain exercises, even if it's just the early morning walk when the sun is coming out, it's very important. The vitamins that you receive in the morning, the fresh air, stretching your joints and stuff like that. I sound like a doctor now, but
Okay.
it's been a very productive session. So I will ask I think the last 2 questions so that you can take them. I think you have a fan. Somebody's written a whole essay for you in the comments down at the end. So let me try and read that for you. So as a frontline customer care agent, I often deal with high call volumes, difficult customers, and little time between interactions. So it's a very tense workspace for him. In roles like mine, where emotional labor is contract, how can I prevent burnout over time while maintaining empathy and professionalism with customers? So what are some of the quick evidence-based techniques that I can use in moments to manage stress without affecting my performance and sounding disengaged with the customer? So I think this question relates to the one that was asked previously, which you answered. So I told you kind of answered most of the questions together. Is it medically and evidently clear that I might not be doing anything at a time, but I am not really resting because my mind is fully active. So I think this also speaks to the fact that people don't know how to switch off their brains. They are constantly active. They are constantly working. We are one of those people. What will you refer to as my point of balance when it comes to attaining full stability of mind and rest, in quotes? Okay. So this covers most of the questions that you've answered. And the third one is I'm soliciting to the management board of the Value Loop for an advanced session to bring back our hosts for a wider coverage on the subject at hand. Interesting. So somebody's advocating for you to come back, doctor. So this is an open question to you. If if you wish, we would have this conversation, and then we can bring you back at some point, and you can talk about or educate other people. Lastly, the last question we can take, or the last comment I can make for you is, for professionals that work 7 days a week, what is the easiest way to deal with stress build up? So when it's built up, like maybe a quick way to reduce stress and avoid carrying over stress from the previous week into the next week. So I think you've also spoken about this. So we can use these for you to finally wrap up. I'm sure there's a kidney transplant that you have to do somewhere.
God, Abba. Oh my God. Come on. All right then. Thank you so much for your comments and for the questions. So I would start with the question on dealing with customers, the cause, and how to prevent burnout while maintaining empathy. And I liked that you spoke about empathy because, this is a conversation, at least in the medical field, we like to have, because over time, after seeing patients and seeing conditions, sometimes people have complained that we do not, extend enough grace. They do not feel like we're empathizing with them. And it's a conversation we sometimes have. We're like, how are we able to retain the emotions without feeling like, oh, this is just another patient? How are we able to see these persons as humans? I would start by saying, there is no amazing customer care agent who can empathize and relate with his customers if he is not taking care of himself. You cannot really pour from an empty cup, right? You have to be full before you can pour. So, and the first person who is deserving of your own empathy is yourself, actually. You have to first pity yourself. Look at yourself, make yourself priority, take care of yourself so that when other people experience you, they experience the best versions of yourself. Trust me, there are people who have found versions of themselves that are not good during stress periods because they neglected self-care, and then everyone now has to deal with a version of them that is not the best version of them. So in roles like yours, rest is still important. I know that sometimes there are roles that are not within our, there are work rules that are not within our control, which was why when I made this presentation, I tried as much as possible to bring the fact that it is not only your duty to ensure that the workspace is good. It's not only your duty to ensure that you have balance and that you don't deal with work stress. There's a role to play. There's a role for your employer to play. There's also a role for your nation to play. And these roles, everybody's role at different level is important. The best you can do is to take care of yourself, but you cannot necessarily take care of a structural problem. Now, when it comes to dealing with patients, I mentioned that if you haven't already taken a full in-depth course on emotional intelligence, perhaps you should take a course on it. Learn emotional intelligence, learn what it is like, what it feels like. That way, you are still able to empathize and be professional with your customers, even at times when you are on a thin thread. I understand because in my own role, even though I am not a customer care agent, I've met patients at their most vulnerable state. And I have also perhaps had to break news that, is not the most favorable to patients. And the ability to be empathetic and professional at the same time is something that I have been called to do a couple of times. And so emotional intelligence helps. It helps you to be able to communicate. It helps you to stay professional. And again, there's no way around it. You need to take care of yourself. There's no way to circumvent it. There are rules that are beyond your control. For those ones, we continue to advocate to government, we continue to advocate to employers. But for the best that you can do, take care of yourself so that you can pour from a full cup. So that way, I'm sure you are able to help. Now, evidence-based techniques that you can use in the moment to manage stress. Evidence-based techniques that you can use in the moment to manage stress without affecting your performance. I would say, since it's work that you do and you're familiar with, sometimes it's best to draft responses. So for example, what would I say to a client when I do not know what to say? Do you understand? What do I say to this client if I really do not know what to say? Now, I do not know the sector that you work, or I can't give a direct example to that speaks directly to what you do. But take, for example, a client is saying, I made an order, it arrived, the goods are damaged, and I would like a refund. If I do not know what the refund policy of my company is, what do I say to this customer or this client? Because I just do not know. Am I open to saying, oh, that's fine, apologies, can you give me a few minutes and I'll get back to you shortly? You know, you have to have, in routine jobs, you have to have routine responses. Decide now, you know, the kind of, situations you are faced with. Put down, just preempt those scenarios and say, okay, if this scenario happens, this is what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to act. Now it's routine to you. Anytime that someone says, I made an order and there's a damage on the order, you already know what to say, or you already know what to say when you do not have the accurate answer to give your clients. So maybe that's a technique that can work. Also, if you are very stressed in that moment, it always helps to take a breath. Just do the breathing exercise. Even when panic is setting in, do the breathing exercise. There's always a professional way to say, I do not know. Find out that way. There's always a professional way. So a professional way to say, I do not know, or I cannot handle it in medical field is to say, okay, this is your condition. I think that the best person to handle it is a nephrologist, a doctor who works on kidneys. I am saying I do not know. I'm not saying to the patient I do not know, but I'm saying to the patient, I'm referring you to someone who knows better. So find ways to do it in your own profession, sorry. Find ways to do it professionally. I think I have answered that particular question. I'll just answer on the person who spoke about working 7 days a week and the easiest way to deal with stress buildup. If I want to be honest, I don't think to work 7 days a week is the best way to go. I don't know if it's a decision, it's a personal decision, because then there's rarely any time to unwind. There's no time to rest and to relieve the stress. And what now happens over time is you're taking the stress of the previous month into the next month, or sorry, the previous week into the next week. And before you know it, you have the chronic stress syndrome or the chronic fatigue, where there's always a headache, where there's always difficulty with sleeping, where there's there's now even a slow pace in how you execute your tasks because you are just so tired. The brain is really fatigued, and what the brain really needs is rest. I mean, people who have struck this balance, that's why the annual leave is important. A time when you are not really working, when you are just resting. That's why the holidays are important for school students. Else they'll just say, I mean, why are we wasting all that holiday time? That holiday time, you can use it and enter the next class. Don't waste. That's why it was designed. That's why even the school curriculum was designed in such a way that there's a rest time for children. And that's why the work structure is designed in such a way that there's annual leave, there's casual leave, there's all of these leaves, so that there is indeed a time when you're not working. Now, the challenge with working 7/7, working every day of the week is you're not finding time to do any other thing. But if it's balance must be struck, then you must work while working, you are eating, while you're eating, you're exercising. While you're exercising, you're ensuring that you're doing things that you actually love to do. Doing things that you love to do helps you to release feel-good hormones. When you release these hormones, your body, feels good, you get better. So doing things that you love. So whilst you may be working 7 days a week, what do you do to stay off? Do you sometimes work in places that allows you to maybe sit in an environment, a green environment? Are you working to unwind? Are you going to a restaurant that you like, or are you sitting with family members? Are you having rich conversations like this? Are you speaking to other people who are working in your space, and perhaps you people are talking about ways to make work easier for you? I don't think that's a good example for resting, but yes, doing things that you love to do. So if you love to dance, you should dance. If you love to shop, you should shop if you have the resources to do that. If you love to cook, you should do the things that you love. regardless. And when you are burnt out, I think you should speak to someone. I think that's a critical part I need to speak about. Sometimes we're ashamed to say we are tired. Don't be ashamed to say you're tired. Don't be ashamed to say you need rest. Don't be ashamed to say no. I think that's also something that professionals need to learn to do. Sometimes you take on tasks that you clearly know you cannot do. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to communicate when you cannot meet certain deadlines, and communicate the reasons why. Okay, you promised that you're going to deliver this on Sunday. However, right now, all the Okada men or all the bikes are on strike. That's just a far-fetched example. But the people or all the companies that would help you to do delivery, they are on strike because of this, because of that, and you're unable to deliver. Communicate to the client. So please don't be afraid to communicate that you're tired. Seek help when you want to do it. And I love this platform because it means that people are comfortable to ask questions. People are discomfortable to speak. It tells me that they feel safe in this particular environment. So feel free to say I am tired. Feel free to say I need to speak to someone. And that was why in my presentation I mentioned that employers should prioritize having access to mental health services where people can sit down and speak, and find communities of people that understand. If I pick up my phone and call perhaps my friend Dr. Rukaya and say, oh, my friend, I had a busy call. She understands what I mean. And I tell her this and I tell her that. Perhaps she'll tell me things that, it's not your fault. Do this. Oh, when I feel this way, I do this. Also have your community, people you can speak to, and people that can relate to your experience. I think that helps a lot. I try to also say some of the few things that I felt like I didn't say, but at this point, I'll just say over to you, Abba.
I'm practicing your breathing exercises. Let me try, and not that the responses were very so Amina that asked the question has said this is a beautiful response, quite helpful. Thank you very much. I would like to expose her that she's also in the medical field. So her saying she works 7 times a week, you should know. Sorry, Amina. This is very insightful. Thank you very much. So before we go, I would like everybody online to give the doctor a virtual round of applause. You can click on the reaction button so that we can flood her page with applause, because she truly deserves them and she has tackled every bit of stress that we have had. So if you have any type of stress, she has said, one, go to the gym, exercise, not necessarily go to the gym, but exercise, talk to someone, have a workout buddy, make sure you have your own personal time. There's a lot of it to digest. You can find all of it on our YouTube channel. You can find it on our social media platforms as well. I'm very sure the doctor will also be sharing it on her page so that you can follow up. And if you see her in town, please wave at her and tell her thank you for the presentation, because she's actually done a very great job. We will let the doctor go. I heard somebody told me that she has kidney transplants to do. I'm not sure how true it is, but please, we would let you go in a bit. Once again, from the Value Loop, thank you very much. We will be reaching out to you to see if you would come back for another session, as somebody has requested. But for now, we appreciate everything you have done. And for our new joiners and for you as well, our channels are on WhatsApp, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. This recording will be put up on YouTube for people that missed it and people that would want to rewatch it because they were stressed and they will want your 40 seconds technique, because that is something that I have also picked up. I will be using it when next somebody has stressed me and I want to move my head. For me, I would like to give a tip that it's good for organizations to have a room that you can go and shout in and just go and scream off the top of your voice and have that. Maybe take a walk. It's very important. Again, eat. Sometimes it's not stressful, you are just hungry. Please eat. It's very important. Drink a lot of water as well. I'm sure the doctor has mentioned that. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. We will let the distinguished doctor go, and then we will see you again in 2 weeks with our very exciting session again. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.